All right, you guys, what is happening? It is Bill back at the wall of tools. I am kind of getting murdered by flies today, so I apologize if I'm a little distracted. I got my candle here, I got my bug spray. I actually wanted to do a review of my fly trap that I have outdoor, and it just was too much. I started to film the video and I was inundated with flies, and so I decided to come back into the garage and see if I could choose another topic for you guys. And I think I have a good one. So today I'm going to be talking about a chainsaw sharpening, and specifically I want to talk about the chainsaw sharpening with a rotary tool versus a manual file. So first things first, I do have two chainsaws at the moment. I have a Stihl MS261C, which is my big boy when I have a big job, and then I have the DeWalt 20 volt max 12-inch chainsaw, electric chainsaw, when I have probably a smaller, more of a pruning type problem that I'm trying to solve. So between the two of them, I do sharpen reasonably often. In preparation for this topic, I started doing just a tiny bit of research and discovered that I'm supposed to be sharpening every time I fill up the tank of gas. Which is great and really informational because I have probably been sharpening about half as often. So now I know I've been working with a somewhat dull chainsaw, and I expect to sharpen quite a bit more, and I want to kind of talk about these two in abstraction. There are some really great videos out there, and if you guys are interested, I'm more than happy to do one on how I actually set up and sharpen with each of these. But I'm assuming that you are at least aware that both of these exist. I kind of want to talk to you about how I use them, how I think about them a little bit differently, and then ultimately let you go off and kind of decide what makes the most sense for you. Okay, so first things first, we'll start by talking about the manual file. This is just quite a bit simpler, really easy to use, pretty intuitive. So this is a manual file. It has a guide on it. You can see here with these circles, or you can take it right out, so you don't need to use the guide, and this is the real juice here. I think a lot of pros would actually tell you not to use this. Well, before I put this down here, what this does is it does have some angle markers, so it's pretty handy in that regard as you're filing. If you're not quite sure what angle you want to file the chainsaw at, this is going to kind of give you just a little bit of a guide to show you, do I need it like this? Do I need it like this? Do I need it like this? So it can be handy. I will say that I'm by no means an expert, but even after I've used this a few times, I find myself really just going to the straight file without using the guide. But it is handy that it comes with it, and I do keep them together just in case. Typically with this, you're going to clamp the chainsaw just like you would anything else, and then you're going to put this through each of the circular links. There's usually about 50 of them, so it's quite a bit, and you only file on the push. So you'll go all through one way, and then obviously the chain has links set up two different ways, so you'll go through file one way, you'll go through and file the other way. I use a little Sharpie, or I think it's actually a Milwaukee, kind of like a job site marker, to just mark where I started. And once I hit the Sharpie mark again, I know I've got to do the other ones. Pretty straightforward. I definitely think this one does the trick in a pinch, doesn't need batteries, doesn't need much of anything, does the job great. All right, this one I think has just quite a bit more going on, and maybe you've guessed by looking at some of the tools in my setup. I love an unusual tool, right? Like, there could be a hammer, but I want this crazy Rube Goldberg machine to hammer nails for me. And this is probably more in that. I will look up the specific name of the kit. So this is a Dremel rotary tool. Maybe you're familiar with it, maybe you're not. This is the 3000 model, and I don't think you need anything crazy in order to sharpen your chainsaw. So if you're out there and you're really just looking for a rotary tool to sharpen your chainsaw, you don't have to buy the most expensive one. You can probably buy the cheapest one, actually. So just FYI on that. It's very versatile. It does way more than sharpening a chainsaw, but since I had it already, I bought this kit that came with it, or excuse me, I bought this kit that will help you sharpen a chainsaw. So you can see here in the kit, it has its own guide. So it will let you know, whether it's, it has the markers for 30 degrees on there. And then it has these grinding wheels right here that come in the kit that will fit 3 different sizes of chainsaw. So it's pretty versatile. You put the grinding wheel in there. It is a little annoying. So this is not the typical top for your Dremel. This is a top that comes with the specialized kit for chainsaw sharpening. So you do have to flip that on and off. Obviously you change the bit just like you would with any other Dremel tool, right? And then you're off to the races. So this goes in the links just like this circular file would, right? It goes in the links. This Dremel spins at some crazy fast speed. You can adjust it, you know, you guys are familiar with rotary tools, hopefully. If not, we can do a full video on it. And then it's going to sharpen as it goes through. You pull it out and do the next one, right? So rather than your hand kind of doing the work, this tool is doing a lot of the grinding work. Very cool. This is what I primarily used for years, frankly. And then, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago or something like that, I got this manual set up. And now I have this interesting opportunity to kind of compare and contrast the two. So in my mind, this setup worked really well for me. I like it. I like the guide. It kind of takes the guesswork out of it. Typically chains will have a line there on each link that indicates the angle at which they should be sharpened. So the guide isn't absolutely necessary, but especially for me as a beginner, I just found that it was the training wheels that I needed. I like that. A couple of the videos that I was watching said, hey, actually a manual file is the best tool for the job. And after having done it for a few months, I would agree. So let's talk and compare and contrast these two. The biggest thing for me on the Dremel that I don't love is setup. There's quite a bit more setup. So if I'm out in the field and I need to sharpen my chainsaw really quick, this is all I need. This, I need power, you can see. And of course they have battery powered versions, but then you're charging a battery. I've got to toggle this, you know, I've got to take this thing on and off. So it's just not easy to set up and do. It feels like a big project. Whereas this, I can almost, and again, I'm sure somebody will tell me this is terrible, right? But I have the chainsaw off. I almost hold it between my legs and I can just file it like that real quick if I need. So this just feels like the cost of entry or the setup is way easier. I do feel like the precision and the guide here is better. I like that better. So I trust this guide a little bit more, but I will say because this Dremel has so much power, it's very easy to over sharpen, i.e. grind the metal past the point where you're sharpening it and you're just wearing down the metal. So for me, I'm always a little worried about that. And I have heard that if you manually file a chain, it will last longer. So I haven't tested that to any degree of scientific expertise, but I do believe that to be true. I've seen this kind of take a chunk out of a link, or if I'm not holding it in the right spot, I'll kind of wear away at the bottom. And obviously it's dangerous to work with a chain that's toward the end of its life like that. So I will knock it for that. Again, I think the setup's a little bit of work. It's not huge, but you have to unscrew this thing. You got to find you got to find a power outlet, that kind of thing. Excuse me, hold on, let me grab this. I think the other thing that I really don't like, I feel like this is coming across really negative, and I like the Dremel, I used it for years. But the other thing that I really don't love about the Dremel is that these bits they wear away very quickly, at least for me. I followed all the instructions, I've read the instructions cover to cover. I've even watched a couple of videos of other people telling me how they like to use the Dremel. And so I'm reasonably confident I'm using it properly, but you can see this thing is already, I mean, it hasn't even been used that many times and it's already kind of wearing down. And so I just feel like I'm replacing these grinding things a lot. They're not super expensive. $5 or something like that is what one of these little grinding wheels costs. So it's not the end of the world, but I've never had any problem with my manual file, and people describe it as lasting for years and years. So I really do feel like it's quite a bit more durable. And so I suppose if you were to think about it from a cost perspective, the manual file is going to be way cheaper. Typically, the other thing I learned is like with a manual file, you're really just supposed to do it like 4 or 5 times. So you can definitely get a lot more filing in with this, but it just doesn't seem like you need it. If you have a manual file 1, 2, 3, 4, and you move along, it's really not that much slower. So this is I guess a weird situation where I'd actually recommend a manual file over a Dremel rotary tool. It's a cool option. I like that it kind of has the training wheels for you. I like that I do feel like with a manual file, so on the flip side, a manual file, you're pushing much harder against the chain because you're really using, you have the chain locked and you're using that to file down the metal. Whereas this, you kind of just hold it and let it grind down the metal. So you do have to have the chainsaw much better secured with this guy. I will say that. That's probably the one downside. Assuming you have a setup where you can, you've got a bench clamp or something that you can really use to just kind of hold your chainsaw in place, I think this is better. If you don't, this is definitely going to be a lot easier to use, and I've experienced that. But overall, this has been just what the doctor ordered. It's cheaper to buy. It's cheaper to do individual sharpenings. It lasts longer. You don't really have to replace parts. You do have to buy a size that's specific to your chain, right? So chains have different size diameter openings, and that's going to dictate which size file. But unless you've got a ton of chainsaws with a ton of different chains on them, you buy this once and you're good to go. And that's also true of this, by the way. So the kit came with different grinding rings. You choose the one that fits your chain. Works just fine. So yeah, I'm calling the manual file my winner. Definitely a close second, definitely a very useful tool, and this just does so many other things. I think the kit that I bought that makes it a chainsaw sharpening kit tool, it was like 20 bucks, maybe less, right? So it was really a Dremel that I spent 20 bucks to turn into a sharpening kit versus this was probably just 20 bucks, right? And then it's all done. Let me know what you think. I know that there are some folks out there that are really freaking good at chainsaw sharpening. It's kind of been a fun rabbit hole to go down and learn all about, all the things you should be doing and tips and tricks and, filing the blade, but then filing down the nubs and the other pieces that dictate cutting height. There's a whole lot to it, and I would love for you guys to drop some knowledge on me. So please tell me about your sharpening setup, tips and tricks. I'd frankly love to hear about it. All right, looking forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. Thanks, bye-bye.